All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Dave Gold Evolve podcast. I'm your host, Dave Gold. This is where I interview industry leaders in the spiritual dating and business world to help men truly evolve. Just a quick shout out to our sponsor at the Self Love Army. Go check out the Godfather program if you're looking for a massive change in your life. My guest today is Dan Gibson. Dan is a dating coach from Australia who has quite an interesting story. And also has a really interesting connection to dating that you guys are going to find out soon. So Dan, welcome so much for jumping on the podcast today. Can you tell the viewers where you are in the world and a little bit about yourself?
Great. Thanks, Dave. How you doing, man? It's good to see you.
Great.
And I love that little background drop you've got there. That's very cool. I'm going to have to get myself one. It's a little bit more modern than my little bookshelf here. So I live in Australia, as you said, thank you. And I'm from a little seaside town called Coffs Harbour, which is a little bit further north than halfway between Sydney and Brisbane. So I'm about 6 hours north of Sydney and about 4.5, 5 hours south of Brisbane. And basically it's the most perfect climate you could ever wish for. It's t-shirt and shorts, 11 months of the year. It's great.
As you know, I was in Australia last year and I really gravitated towards the culture and also the beautiful scenery along the coast and some beautiful beaches. So I'm definitely missing Oz right now. But let's hear a little bit about your journey. So I know you have a very interesting story to lead you up to the point where you're at today, mentoring men. So tell me, how did you get there?
Well, I mean, obviously it's a long story, and it probably started way back when I was very young, and I always had as a young boy, even I was interested in women, and some of my very first experiences with women ended up being quite bad. And the very first one that I can remember that was bad was when I was in grade 5. I fell in love with a girl, and it was in a very small community, and we lived down in Tasmania. And there's quite a bit of a story around it, but I ended up being shamed around that quite brutally in the public arena. And what it felt like a lot to me. And I ended up, that compounded itself throughout high school. And I ended up just not having a particularly good experience with women and dating that then fed into my 20s. And then, it eventuated with me having a very, very seriously toxic relationship with a woman that was the polar opposite of the correct woman for me, and in the relationship for all the wrong reasons. And as a result of that, it took me on a journey of self-discovery to say, taking full accountability and full responsibility for myself as a person. How did I end up here? How did I end up with this woman? How did I end up in this tragic situation that resulted in the blowing up of my life? And I had to redesign my life from scratch. And I had to look at all the things that happened to me throughout my childhood, all my limiting beliefs, everything that had compounded to end up there, strip it all back, start again and rebuild. And it's been a process that's been going on. So I guess in a sense, most of my life, but really the hard work that I've done has been over the last 4 or 5 years, the really hard work. And it's resulted in me getting to obviously a much more superior place in my life where I'm completely in control of who I am, what I'm doing, where I'm going, who I spend time with, my dating life, my sex life, all of that. And it's a wonderful position to be in. And I'm now in a position where I can actually help other guys achieve that same level of self-confidence, self-mastery. I guess just design a better life for themselves and not be living where they are. So that's kind of the rough story. How's that?
So you talked about the shame culture that you experienced actually at a younger age. This is something that we talked about in my last podcast with Mitch Miller, how we've gone from a guilt-based to a shame-based culture. And a lot of people won't really connect with, you're a white guy from Australia, Tasmania, beautiful country. People won't understand. They won't connect with the fact that maybe because of that shame that was placed on you in an earlier age, it would be very difficult for you to do something like meet and attract someone that you really want to be with. So how did that affect you, and how did that kind of get under your skin, and then how did you grow out of it?
Well, it took me most of my life to grow out of it. But what actually happened was that the girl that the first girl that I sort of remember falling in love with was at a new school that I went to, and being a small community, someone that helped my parents and helped like there was this sort of weird connection, and it got out that I was, you know, in love with this girl at the ripe old age of however old I was, like 10 or 11 or something like that. And people like actually laughed at me about that. They thought it was funny, and they made fun of me, which is fine. And if you're a grown man that understands yourself and has self-confidence, and that's all part of life, right? But for some reason, because I got completely rejected by her and laughed at by her family and by even people in my own family, it just traumatized me beyond imagination. And from then on in, I was scared. Like, that was my first experience. And so that scared the absolute shit out of me anytime from then on in, that I saw a woman that I felt attracted to or liked. And that followed me through high school. And so my interactions with women were very weak, and they were very not coming from a place of confidence. I knew that I kind of wanted to be, you know, I wanted to date those attractive women and be attractive to them. But it was like that. And I guess there's a whole bunch of other reasons, but, you know, that was the start of it for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, not only does it make sense, I kind of connect with that because I had something similar where I had one of those girlfriends at a very early age, like sixth grade, and it was kind of an online relationship, even though we went to the same middle school. But when, you know, she dumped me or whatever you want to call it, I don't even know if that's considered a relationship at the time, that trauma kind of lingered with me, and no one was there to actually help me through that process of understanding, okay, it's not a big deal. It's, you know, it's not you. You know, you can still go out and talk to women and express your desires, and also express your interest. And so instead of continuing to show love and show affection, I went inside for a long time. And I think that it wasn't until recently that I've realized that I don't need to hide my intention or my love for another person when I meet them. But most people won't realize that, and especially due to the fact they've gone through some kind of trauma at an early age, especially growing up. And they're looking for these patchwork solutions, okay, that will get them, you know, sex or a girlfriend, but it's not actually fixing the underlying root cause of why they're struggling in this area. So with that being said, you've been doing this for some time now. So what do you think really causes men problems in the dating world today?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I know that you and I offline have had some discussions, you know, recently about some stuff, but there was something that occurred to me at a really strong level just today. I was thinking about that. And I don't think there's any one particular thing. I think there's a culmination of things. There's a combination of different factors that are creating this situation and creating this fear and this disconnect between men and their sexuality and what it is. So we've got, you know, the extreme feminist movement creates fear among men. HR, corporate workplace policies create fear among men about expressing themselves sexually. The public shaming of men by women, that doesn't really occur that much, but when it does, it's very frightening. And if men think that that's going to happen to them, it's very frightening. But something that occurred to me today was that the other thing that we're not really aware of is that as men, we're falling into the trap of, at a young age, if we're failing to create a dating life that is working, and is successful and is building on successes, rather than one that starts with some failures, and then the failures compound throughout over a course of, a period of time, and they get successively worse because of that original failure, and we let that fear overtake us. What we end up doing is we end up turning to fill that void. We end up turning to social media and porn, and we start to objectify women. And the thing that makes that even more difficult today is that there's a whole range of women out there that are actually sexually objectifying themselves as a means to an end to make money. And it's becoming so prevalent online. We see it on Instagram, but now since COVID, in the 6 months that everyone's been locked up at home, what's happening is all these girls that were initially trying to monetize their body and their sexuality through Instagram are now doing it through OnlyFans. So you're seeing more and more women saying, oh, I've got an OnlyFans account. I've got an OnlyFans account, where they're putting more and more explicit material online. And I think the questions that have to be raised about this is, what's the void that the women are trying to fill that are doing this? And I think we're talking about the void that the men are trying to fill when they're doing this, but there's a massive disconnect. And if we are men that are looking at naked women online, looking at porn all the time to try and get our fill, and not focusing on developing ourselves as men to be better men, to be more attractive, to practice the art of going and talking to women, to build a connection that isn't disconnected by the screen, then we're always going to have a void that we're never going to fill. And I think that the objectification of women, the sexual objectification of women, is something that I am focused on helping the guys that I work with really, really stop doing that and start focusing on the human side of the women that they're talking to. And in doing so, they're going to reduce the amount of fear that they experience by going and talking to a pretty woman. Because, a lot of these men can talk to their friends that they don't necessarily find attractive, but as soon as they see a woman that they think is particularly pretty or particularly attractive, automatically the conditioning and the programming that's coming to them from this lifelong experience of objectifying women through porn and the media kicks into gear. And so when they go to talk to her, they're trying to get her sexuality, they're trying to get her body, they're trying to get what she represents as a pretty girl that they see in the media, social media, all the time. They're not approaching it as in, this is just, okay, sure. So this woman's triggered my sexual emotions. She's made me feel, I've got a feeling inside me that's of attraction. So now my job is to just go and find out if she's a cool person and we're going to get along. And when men realize that, I think it does help to take away some of the fear in actually going and talking to the women that they should be talking to. Does that make sense, Dave?
It's a big one, because it's not just the society which is objectifying women, it's also the subcultures, and the subgroups within them. So in the dating world, for example, there are many different niches, and when it pushes into the seduction community, which I think some of the guys that might be listening to this podcast have exposure to, there's a lot of objectifying of women, okay? And then someone like you or I, okay, who doesn't necessarily, we don't necessarily embrace this type of language, okay? We will be shamed. We will be shamed for putting a different light on it, okay? Or for trying to change the terminology, or just normalizing conversations and normalizing meeting and having it not be necessarily all this made up jargon of, picking up women and achieving some kind of validation or ego trip just from getting someone into bed based off of their looks. And I experienced this a lot so far in the last few years, that guys get really caught up in this, and then it's really hard to take them out of it. Okay. Now, I want to go back to what you said about building upon success rather than failure. So something that I noticed as well when I was coaching guys in Melbourne and in other places is that if they'll go out and they'll meet someone and it won't go as planned, they'll look at it as a failure. Okay, same thing, you know, in business. If you get on a call with someone and it doesn't go the way you planned and they don't end up becoming one of your clients, some people will look at that as a failed call. Okay, and what's dangerous about that is you are getting caught up into this negative spiral of, okay, you only are successful if you get a certain outcome. And what I like to tell my students is, let's build off of a, you know, small victory or small success, and those small successes will build up to a stronger person, will build momentum. So what do you think when it comes to building off of a success formula rather than off of a you know, failure-based formula?
What do I think about it?
Yeah.
I need you to be a bit more specific give me a bit more of a specific question.
Yeah, how do you help men realize that by reframing their interactions towards looking at the success or looking at the value in each interaction rather than looking at the rejection or the failure?
Quite simply, and I don't want to overcomplicate this, it's really simple. Every failure is a step towards success. And it really is as simple as that. And an expert is someone who has simply made more mistakes than anyone else, really, if you boil it down. You know, you can't be an expert if you haven't experienced what the failures are, because then you know, don't go down that path, don't go down that path, don't do this, don't do that. So as a coach and mentor in the dating sphere, my job is not to tell men that it's going to be easy, not to tell men that they're going to be able to do it without doing the work, that it's going to be some kind of magic pill. It's like anything. And the same reason that the fitness industry is, you know, a multi-billion-dollar industry in coaching, or, you know, I don't know the figures, I'm just making that up, but we all know it's big, right? And there's personal trainers and online fitness coaches. It's the same thing. Dating, relationships, it's a skill set. It requires a certain level of knowledge. It requires a certain level of experience, and it requires a certain level of practice in order to get it right. The idea of getting a coach or someone on board to help you is to accelerate that process. Because what we see is men doing it, trying to do it on their own for their whole life, and some men never, ever getting it right, ever, you know. Other men doing it, and it takes them, you know, like it took me with an intense amount of work, you know, several years to get it done, or finding the right coach that's going to be there by your side that can do it, that can guide you through a very proven process of minimizing the mistakes that you make and ensuring that when you do make a mistake that it's going to be okay. Like, hold your hand, come on mate, it's going to be okay, that you've done the right thing, it's fine. Now you know not what to do, let's keep going forward. This is where we've got to try and get to. These are the steps. Look where you've come. Look at the success you've had here, the success you've had here, the success you've had here. We're growing, we're building, we're getting there. And I think that, like, there's no point in complicating failure. It's just a step in the right direction, basically. It's a stepping stone.
Now, as you've made this shift into mentoring men, especially in the dating world, okay, have you experienced anyone saying or characterizing you like as a hitch or something like this? Because I know a lot of guys experience this, especially when they get started being dating coaches, and others don't understand, I guess, the vastness of the market. And so they just associate dating coach with something that they've seen in a movie or some MTV show. So what do you think it takes to be a coach? Okay. And what do people usually say when they hear that you are a dating coach?
Look, I find for the men that become my clients, they're generally, they've never heard of it. They've generally never heard of it. It's a new concept to them, and they're interested. And these guys are, they're executors already. They're interested in personal growth. They want to better their lives, basically. and they quite often have had coaching or mentoring in another area of their life. So they're already recognized that that's something that can, and if they've had success with that, then they're very quick to take on board, hang on, yeah, if I find the right coach, it's going to like accelerate my growth here. But what most guys out there that are struggling in their dating relationships don't realize is that because the ego is so strong in men, you know, like naturally speaking, we see it in the media all the time. If you're a real man, then you should be awesome at you should be a stud, right? You've got to be the guy that can, you know, have sex with heaps of women. And, you know, there's all this pressure on us as men to already be this man that knows what to do. And at the end of the day, if we haven't had anyone to show us, and they certainly don't teach attraction, dating, male-female attraction psychology in high school, you know, let's not even talk about the antiquated school system, which is completely broken. That's a whole nother interview, right? But no one's taught any of this. If we're not lucky enough to have, you know, a mentor that's a few years older than us, or the uncle that was always good with chicks, you know, most of us have just got our dad, right? That probably fell into a needy relationship out of like some kind of mutual neediness, or, you know, I don't want to make too many judgments because that's not always the case. That's a mass generalization. But, you know, we're not getting taught how to be men from an attraction, sex, dating point of view by anyone. And we're left to just guess. And if we have a couple of failures early on, as a young kid that doesn't understand what failure is, and we see that as our world, we're embarrassed and we feel shame to go and talk about it, and it compounds throughout our life and we never do anything about it. So we get to the point now where through the internet, we're discovering that there are other people who have gone down this journey, done the work, done the research, done the study, understand what it all means, and are in a position to share that information now and share that knowledge. So what does it take to be a coach? First of all, it takes someone that needs to be several steps ahead of you, at least. They don't have to be an expert. I still have mentors. I still have coaches. You know, I still talk to you, Dave, about this stuff because I learn something from you every time I talk to you, or whoever it is that's in that sphere. And I talk to other dating coaches all the time. So it takes passion in that area. It takes a willingness to want to help people. It takes a willingness to put up with shit from clients sometimes because, you know, when they get angry, when they don't want to do something and their ego comes down and they're like, or you're trying to rebuild a limiting belief that they're having and they're like, no, it's fucking bullshit. I'm not fucking like da-da-da. It's like, you know, you got to have a thick skin to realize that it's just the ego that's stopping them from growing out of their shell, growing out of their skin and discovering that new world and possibilities that's waiting for them. So a bit of a thick skin as a coach, absolutely. And just a willingness to want to help people. Like it turns me on. There's nothing that gives me greater pleasure than me having a conversation with someone and a light bulb moment. You know, someone has a light bulb moment, I feel that, and it's, you know, it's amazing. It's such a good feeling.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me a story about how you were backpacking and you were living in Denmark and other places, and you were, in your words, shit with women, okay, at the time. So what changed? What happened? Did you meet a coach? Did you read a book or watch a video or do a course? What changed from that place to the place where you are today, where you're feeling really confident about your interactions with the opposite sex?
I would say more than anything has been stripping back, doing the work to strip back the limiting beliefs that have been given to me by other people and social media, I would say has been the biggest thing. Because where there was a gap in my life, a void, whenever I wanted to fill that void and I would see something that gave me a hint, you know, like something in the media, like you read a story or you read a story in a magazine or you see a romantic movie that sort of talks like a fantasy movie that talks about how men and women should interact, you know, like the magical romantic moment when the man does this and the woman does that and all that stuff. When you've got a void inside you and you're looking for answers, you take that stuff, it comes into you. You can't help it. It sits in there. It goes into your subconscious somewhere and it's a bit from here and a bit from there and a bit from here. And really that's a result from just not being a whole person yourself and really understanding what it is that you want. where it is that you want to go in life, and the truth, the single truth that's within inside us all, which is different for everyone, you know. And when we let that stuff into our psyche, it's someone else's ideas, you know. Everything in the media, everything that we see, Instagram, Facebook, the movies, the news that we read, it's someone else's idea that we are taking on.
So give me an example of a limiting belief that you hear frequently that men go through when it comes to their dating life, and especially the busy entrepreneurs. What's a limiting belief when it comes to their time and energy in dating?
The most common one is there's no time. There's no time for dating. It's not a priority in my life. All this other stuff is priority. And what that really translates to is I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared to go and do the work. I don't know what it is that I have to do to fix this area of my life. And so to avoid confronting that, I'm going to go and invest all my energy here and here and here in these different areas, in my work, in my, my hobbies, and, other areas of my life. And so they shut themselves off to that, right? And once you start getting an understanding of what it is that you have to do as a man, when I start to understand that, and how easy it is to create relationships and develop connections, and they don't have to be demanding of your time. Of course, everything in life that you want to be good at requires some investment of time. And if you've made a really informed decision that you truly want to be a hermit that lives on your own, doesn't want to have connections with other people, doesn't want to have an intimate sexual connection with a beautiful woman. If you really have sat down and thought about that, and that's the goal for your life, fine, go and do it. But that's not the case. Most of these guys, it's an avoidance. It's an avoidance of facing the fact that they need to do some work on it, because they think it's this massive thing that they don't know what steps to take. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to reach their hand out to. And that's the amazing thing about dating coaching, as I'm sure you know, is that, there are guys out there that have invested a lot of time in understanding all of this, and they're in a position to condense the amount of time and effort that it takes to become, to get 80% of the work done into a very short period of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you use the word avoidance, and I think, as people, we tend to gravitate towards this avoidance in many facets of our life. And in this example with men, they're experiencing a certain level of success, at least the kind of clients that you deal with, and they want to avoid the rejection. Okay, they want to avoid the pain, okay, because it's going to hurt if a girl, especially one that they like, doesn't show that same sense of interest back, okay? And, we talked about this last time, who wants to be liked? And Eleanor Roosevelt had a quote. She said, "You wouldn't worry so much about what others think of you if you realized how seldom they do." So,
yeah.
So one thing that I've noticed is that some guys, if they want me to go out and give them a little push to go and meet someone in a natural setting, okay, will feel a lot of fear around the idea that other people are judging them. Other people are judging them, based off of the fact that they're taking action. Other people are judging them because of their successes or their failures, okay? And I have to consciously and constantly wake them up to the idea that these other people don't really care about you. Maybe they're trying to bring you down, okay? Or maybe they get a little chuckle out of it, but they don't really care about you, okay? They really care about themselves. And after a few minutes that the interaction is over, they move on with their life and you move on with yours. So when it comes to being liked, what do you think is something that men should realize, that being liked is actually not necessarily necessary for them to be successful in life?
And I would say that 100% aiming to be liked by everyone is probably the worst thing that as a man you can do in your life. Because when you feel what it's like to be truly adored, respected, admired, and loved, the qualities that you have as a man, your unique personality, which is your own combination of primarily your life experience, right? Everyone's life experience is vastly different from birth to the man they are today. But that's partly responsible for your sense of humor. All the other aspects of your personality, your dominance, your masculinity, all these other aspects of you as a man that is your unique stamp on the world. When someone really, when you can express that with confidence, that like you're not trying to, you're like standing, I say to my clients, it's like, you've got to be the oak tree, right? You've got to be the trunk of the old 100-year-old oak tree that stands on top of that hill, like a sentinel being with these huge roots that go down into the ground, and a couple of massive, big old, solid 100-year-old branches that go out into the sky. And that's there. That's the framework that's there, the masculine energy to support the fruits and the leaves of the tree. And when the storm comes, the fruit and the leaves all fall off. That's actually, that sounds pretty bad, but that's the feminine energy, is the fruits and the leaves. It comes and goes with the seasons. It's the beauty. But the masculine energy, the man, he is that trunk and the branches of that tree rooted to the ground. And that is you understanding you as a man, who you are and what your value is. And when you have that and you recognize that in yourself and you express that to the world, there are going to be people that say, no, thanks, that's not for me. Don't like that. And that's okay, because there are going to be some people that go, wow, that is strength. That is amazing. That is awesome. That guy knows who he is. He knows what he wants, and he fucking just goes and bees it. And some people are going to love you for that. And that's in business. That's with clients. That's with women. That's with everything. And so that then takes us to the thought that, like, one of the beautiful things about being a dating coach is that the work that we do as dating coaches is actually the precursor to so many other things unlocking in a man's world. Because quite often, and well, this was my experience, was that not being able to create the relationships and the connections that I thought that I wanted and that I deserved, because of all these influencing factors and these limiting beliefs that I had that were making me this kind of weak man that was trying to, wanting to be liked by people and changing aspects of my personality, thinking that if I softened this or hardened this or did this differently, then that person, that would suit this person's needs over there. And instead just went, no, I'm not changing myself for anything. This is who I am. And if that person wants to come into my life and like me and love me, then they can. I'll let them, because that'll be great. It'll be a good value proposition between us both, right? I know what my value is, and that person's got some value. That woman sees my value and wants to come and do a value exchange. Awesome, right? And then, so we change it. We change ourselves. Now I've kind of lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that one? That was good. And then I got sidetracked. So we were talking about, get me back on track, Dave. Come on.
Well, we were talking about, who wants to be liked, but now I want to move over into another subject, which is basically from an example I had a few days ago, where I was on a little walk with a girl. It was quite nice, and at the end I asked her a question. I said, do you think that it's appropriate to talk about sex on a date? And she said, well, basically not if we're going to have sex, because some people, I guess, have this idea that if there is chemistry, that the sexual conversation doesn't even need to occur, and that the sex will just happen naturally. which really made me think about things for a second, because with this new culture that really highlights any kind of abuse or assault, wouldn't it make most sense to talk about your sexual desires, okay, and your sexual background and history, all right, especially with STDs and sexually, all this kind of things that are now very prevalent in the society? Wouldn't it make more sense to open up and talk about these things before we have an interaction like this? So what do you think? What comes first, sex or a relationship?
What comes first, sex or a relationship? I think that for me, it's undoubtedly, hang on. I feel like you've mixed up the question there, because you were talking about sex, and then you've asked me the question, what comes first, sex or the relationship?
Okay, so let's take it one at a time. So first, is it possible to have chemistry with someone and still open up about your sexual desires?
Yes. However, in the early stages, there's a potential for the incorrect, now this is from my point of view, is that if you talk about it the wrong way before having sex, it can influence and reduce the amount of sexual tension that exists if it's done incorrectly. If it's done right, then it can increase the amount of sexual tension. And for me, sexual tension is all about a sexual relationship, because that is what, building that sexual tension is so good. And a lot of men really shy away from that. They get scared of that. That's when you've got you're building a connection with a woman and you're looking in her eyes, and that spark, that electricity is there, and you just know that something's going to happen, and that's getting stronger and stronger, and it's building and it's building. A lot of men, that's at the point where they'll start to get scared, and it's just a lack of experience, and also thinking that there's something inherently wrong with it. But once you learn, as a man, once you learn about that sexual tension and you let it build, finally releasing that is one of the most amazing experiences that you can have, and I really love that. So I would say be careful about how you talk about sex, but there's nothing that's not on the table for me. I will talk about anything and everything with a woman before or after I've had sex with her. And personally, if I'm interested and attracted sexually to a woman, then having sex sooner rather than later is an important thing, because a woman needs to know that you are interested in her as a sexual being, because women want a sexual relationship as well. They have to know if you as a man view them as a friend or, an economic partnership, like a business partnership, or, they need to have that kind of certainty as well, what's actually going on. And it's our job as the men to really lead that and guide that. And so it's important to work towards consummating a sexual relationship early on. Does that answer your question?
Where do you think that men decided that befriending a woman just to be intimate with her was necessary?
Good question. When did men decide that?
Yeah, how did that shift happen in the culture, and it's almost become normalized?
Now, I'm going to be speaking by the seat of my pants on this one a little bit, and I can't cite any particular author or anything. But
just your opinion.
But I remember reading about animal behavior, particularly within chimps that are considered, to be genetically our closest relatives and bonobos, and the idea of manipulative behavior for the males that are not the top in that pack, in that social circle, or the top 2 or 3, that have access naturally by just being the man, they have access to the women. And the guys underneath that can't compete at that level, and they want to have sex, they need to find manipulative ways to doing it. And, being nice and being friendly and befriending women, to get in their pants is the quickest way to not getting in their pants, to be perfectly honest. And it's like, frankly, it's manipulative and it's dishonest and it's also weak behavior. And absolutely 100%, the goal of my work that I do with men is to say, like, if you've got to do that, then you're better off not having sex at all, really. Like, let's get you to the point where, you know, no longer do we have to bash other men on the head to get the women, like compete in a physical sense, but we have to compete with our confidence and our self-assuredness and our self-confidence and our masculinity. And so teaching men how to access that, how to develop that, how to magnify it, how to highlight it is a way to help them stop doing that, which is, you know, being nice to women to get laid is manipulative at the end of the day. So.
Just to jump back to the point you made about sexual tension. So what I've come to realize is that a lot of people confuse the sexual tension with excitement. So they get really excited and then they're not actually conscious of whether or not the sexual tension is present. Okay, and for a lot of guys who are just new with dating or just starting to understand, you know, social dynamics and the way that men think, the way that women think, okay, they may misinterpret something and think that there's sexual tension there based off of something that they read or something they heard, okay, and they start getting excited, and then when they go to kiss the girl or when they go to escalate or whatever it is, they don't get the same kind of response or you know, outcome that they liked. So with that said, okay, we've talked about some things that men do wrong, right? Where they get a little bit excited or they try to befriend women instead of stating their intentions clearly. Let's talk about some things that guys can do that are right, like calibration, okay, or being present. So what do you think are some of the best ways for men to learn calibration?
Get a coach, number one,
Mm-hmm.
because that'll accelerate your progress tenfold. Because a coach that's there by your side, you feed. It's a constant feedback. You know, the right person there to help you out, you're going to be able to get in touch with them on a regular basis and you say, hey, I just had this interaction. This is what happened. This is how I felt. This is what I observed. And a good dating coach is going to have already had all that experience in much greater numbers, and is going to be able to reference that and say, look, objectively speaking, this is what's happened. This is the overall picture, the greater picture, right? So that's the first thing. Second of all, in terms of calibration, you know, it takes practice, because when you first start talking to women, there's always an uncomfortable growth stage, and it's unavoidable. And if you're not willing to go through this, then as part of the growth, then unfortunately you're going to have to, you know, step aside and let some other men date the women that you want to date.
Let's take it back a step. What is exactly calibration when it comes to social dynamics and dating? Yes,
absolutely. In order to calibrate to the situation, when we're talking about human interactions, and this is interacting face-to-face with human beings, live, in person, unscripted, right? This is where you are talking to a woman in the bar that you see for the first time. And, you know, what makes humans special is we have, you know, we have consciousness, we have self-awareness, we have access to unlimited creativity and imagination in our minds, right? And so therefore, whatever we're going to think and whatever we're going to say next is completely unpredictable. I don't know what you're thinking now. I don't know what you're going to say. You don't even know what's going to pop into your mind until it pops into your mind, right? It just appears. And this is the human condition. And so when we're interacting with humans, constantly the environment and all the stuff that's all the stimulation that's coming into us is making our imagination pop, and we're thinking of different things. So the woman is when we're talking to her, and we are, and and so women will say whatever comes into their mind, and men will say, so every interaction is different. So in order to calibrate to that, and that means to adjust our behavior, adjust our body language, adjust the way that we are interacting with that interaction, we need to be extremely present in the moment and be able to take in what's coming, the sub-communication that's coming from the other person that we're interacting with. And so, you know, eye contact is a really great way of making sure that we're present. You know, if your eyes are darting around when you're talking to someone, you know, every little distraction, the TV in the background's just drawing your attention away, your attention away, then you're not present to the moment, and you're not able to really just slow down your internal processes and understand what's happening in that interaction and be able to respond, not react to it. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And this word presence comes up again and again in the interviews that I do, whether it's with spiritual, business, or, you know, dating industry leaders, because when you are truly in the moment, okay, you talk to me about Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, you can manifest this almost superhero-like state, superpower-like state, where your energy is really channeled, okay, and someone else can feel it. They can feel whether you're with them, whether you're listening, okay, whether you're planning out what you're going to say next. You know, I've got a few bullet points about things that I want to talk about with you and with my guests on this podcast, but at the same time, if all I did was just talk about those bullet points, I might be missing a lot of juicy topics that I could get into with you, with my other guests, or in the dating example, when I'm actually on a date with a woman, because she's giving me clues, she's giving me signs of, you know, the rabbit hole that we should lead down that may lead to a, you know, more spicy or interesting topic. You never know. But if you're not present in the moment, you're going to miss it. And then you're going to come back to Dan or to Dave or to whoever, and you go, what did I do wrong? I did exactly what you told me to do. And you go, no, actually, you need to elevate your sense of consciousness and awareness and presence even more if you want to connect with that person on a deeper level. Now, with that being said, I think we're ready to jump in to our next segment, okay? Which...
You're scaring me, Dave.
Yeah, Dan, I think you're going to scare me a little bit as well, because out of all the people that I've interviewed, I have never seen a connection between science and dating before. So you've talked to me about your interest in quantum mechanics and quantum physics, and I want to understand, how does that correlate to the dating world?
Thanks a lot for putting me in the poo on that one. That's fine. Okay.
You knew it was coming.
So, yeah. I didn't think that you'd actually want to talk about that, though.
I definitely want to talk about it.
All right. Quantum particle physics. So everything that we see, everything around us is just energy. And I'm sure you've heard that before. It's made up of atoms. And atoms are just made up of energy. They're made up of, it's just energy, right? Einstein proved that with his general theory of relativity and his famous equation, E=mc². And the reason that quantum mechanics and particle physics interest me so much is that particle physicists, and I don't know a huge amount of this. I just read an overview of it all. I'm interested at a sort of reasonably high level. I don't know what the equations are, you know, I don't know that detail, but I can see it fitting into everything that we do in our daily life. Is that we're made up of atoms. We have this body that's made up of atoms. We have consciousness that is connected to the energy field of the universe. Like undoubtedly, I can't see how it's not, you know, because we are formed of atoms. We eat food that's made of atoms that grows, and that the atoms in there turn into our new body parts, and the energy within that flows in and out of our body. And we just, the illusion that we see around us is the meaning that in our lifetime we've put onto everything we see. So imagine a baby. When a baby's born, and you don't remember this, but a baby is living like an acid trip because they don't have any meaning. All they see is like color and objects. They can't tell, they can't distinguish distance. they don't have any of that reference experience, right? Everything's just weird and colors and energy flowing. And over time, we quickly learn to be able to navigate that field of flowing energy. We quickly develop meaning around everything. Like, this is a phone. This is my hand. But imagine to a baby, like, he looks at his hand, he doesn't know what a hand is. It's just a pink blob that's floating in air in front of his eyes. He's like, whoa, like, what's that? That's trippy, Well, he's not thinking that, and so we're just energy. And scientists, particle physicists have demonstrated. So Einstein said that the fastest speed in the universe is light, which is 300,000 kilometers per second, roughly, and that's the only speed with which information can be transferred between two places. The particle physicists have discovered that they can get particles talking to each other at distance instantaneously. They don't understand how this works, but they've proven it. They call it spooky action at a distance, I think, or something like that. The scientists actually call it spooky. Like, man, this is crazy, right? And also they have demonstrated and proven that matter, which we think either exists or doesn't exist, can, out of the quantum field, pop up and suddenly appear out of nowhere. And then just as quickly, it can disappear into nowhere because it's just energy. And then it gets even crazier when you start talking about dark energy and, like it gets deeper and deeper. So we're all connected to this energy field that we live within. And when we put our intention into our energy, using our consciousness and our self-awareness and our imagination and our creativity, all the stuff that comes into our consciousness is just coming from the energy field. And we're connected to that. I'm connected to you by that. And we can actually influence what's happening around us by really getting present, getting into the moment and thinking very clearly about what we want, creating it in our imagination, right? So creating a very clear picture in our imagination of what we want. And then every day, just working towards achieving that, working towards actually building that, creating that. Because everything that you see, this pen, this phone, my t-shirt, the watch that I'm wearing, whatever it is, everything was once just an idea. It was once an idea in someone's head. They imagined it. And then there it is. It's created. Amazing. That's about it. That's all I got to say on the matter, Dave.
I don't get to ask you a follow-up question?
Sure, go for it.
Well, if that's all you've got to say on the connection between quantum physics and dating, okay, what about augmented reality and artificial intelligence? Because we've also had this discussion about the future of dating, the future of sex. And you were talking before about the Instagram culture, social media taking a lot of our attention away, OnlyFans and porn and things like this that really suck us in, okay, and create its own augmented reality of what is really, what is really important when it comes to dating. But are we moving away from a place where we can be truly present with the rise of artificial intelligence and augmented reality, or is it actually going to help us be more present and be more in the moment?
That's actually, now that you put it in those words, that question, that's actually a really interesting question. Does the rise of the algorithms and artificial intelligence, which combines with big data to give us augmented reality and a global digital connection, the Internet of Things, right? The IoT. Mm-hmm. Does that give us the ability to become more present? No, I don't think it does at all. I think it's actually reasonably concerning that we're heading down this path. So you opened your question there with talking about what is dating and AI and augmented reality. and what is the connection there. But the way the question ended is that you're actually talking about what is, to me, the question you're asking is what is the destiny of human beings when it comes to human connection and human interactions once we start overlaying the immense influence that the rise of machines is having. Machines being, algorithms and artificial intelligence, things like Google Glasses. So I spoke to you about an idea of how, we're all connected to the internet. Our dating app, we log our profile on a dating app. We use the Google Glasses, which are connected to the internet, but they've kind of got a head-up display at the same time. So you're walking down the street, and the idea of them is that as you walk past a store, like, a clothing store, it pops up, sale, 70% off, in the head-up display on your glasses. And that's the augmentation of AI. But we can, and I'm sure it will happen, we're going to apply this to dating, where your Tinder app is programmed into your glasses and it says, I'm single, I like this, I like that. And so
there actually is one app. It's called Happen. It was a French app, and it was designed so that if you crossed paths with someone and they were also on the app, only then could you match with them.
Cool. How did it work? Is it working or not working?
You're going to have to find out for yourself. You're going to have to get your students to A/B test that one.
What's it called? Hatch? What did you say? Hatch?
Happen.
Sounds like
Happn. It's a French app.
You mean Hatch, like Gremlins or something? It sounded pretty evil. So what do we run the risk of, Dave? And like, my big overview of where we're going is that augmented reality and AI is actually taking us away from our ability to connect to our higher consciousness. And so therefore the importance of learning to be present, learning to understand our emotions, learning to become more self-aware and access our creativity, which is unlimited because it's connected to the quantum field. And just like matter, scientists have proven that matter just pops out of nowhere and then disappears, so does our creativity. And the thing that differentiates us as humans to the machines that are coming is our ability to be creative. And if we let this artificial intelligence make us lazy as humans, because that's what it's doing, right? It's stopping us from, every time someone comes up with a new AI, it's stopping us from having to think.
Well, it does take a certain level of creativity just to invent the software and write the algorithms and produce this kind of technology, correct?
Correct. But there's a whole host of people that are not doing anything. There's people that are creating, and they're like, yes, we can do this, we can do that. And then there's people that are consuming, right? As consumers. And I see it now. I'm like, my Gmail account, it finishes the last 5, like, it's not just autocorrect. When it first came up, it would really badly guess the word you were trying to type in your phone, right? Like, badly. And in fact, I turned it off years ago because it just pissed me off so much. It was so bad. And I've suddenly realized that now in Gmail, it finishes the whole sentence sometimes. And I'm like, whoa, that's exactly what I was going to say. Now, if we succumb to that and everything else that's doing that for us, and we stop thinking for ourselves and using our creativity and being present with our own consciousness and our own feelings and all that stuff that's inherently human, then we're just going to fall to the wayside and everything else is going to accelerate past us. And Yuval Noah Harari, who's an Israeli professor and an author of Sapiens, A Brief History of Everything, plus his other 2 books that carry on for that. It's like a trilogy of books. He talks about that, and he's like, half the world's population by 2050 is going to be relevant, extinct. Not extinct, like they'll still exist in life, but they'll have no meaning. They'll have no meaning because they're no longer contributing to, the activity that's occurring on the planet. So, we've got to be present. We've got to be connected to our creativity, our imagination, and we've got to utilize that to the best of our ability to keep creating, amazing outcomes and realities for ourselves as humans. And if we do that with our relationships, we can imagine anything that we want. We can imagine anything. Any relationship is possible. Agreement. Would you agree with that?
Out of this interview is going to be formed the newest type of coach, the creativity coach. Because creativity is Wow, that is just like such an underrated concept that not only is it underrated, but as you just said, it's being suppressed and soon it will be nearly non-existent. There will only be a small, small percentage of people that are still, you know, not just creating, but doing it in a creative fashion. Okay, because there is a difference between creating content. Anyone can post a picture of, remember when the Black Lives Matter started and everyone, including myself, posted a picture of a black square on their Instagram. Well, that is content creation, but is that creative in and of itself? Okay, not quite. And what I've noticed is that not every woman thinks that I'm very creative or funny or charismatic, and that's okay. But the ones that do like me, they see my creative side. They see my difference, okay, and how I am unique and how I stand out from the crowd. And so this is something that I really preach to my students is that when it comes to, because I do with a lot of personal branding with my students and the overlap between the way in which they brand themselves and how it will elevate both their business and their dating life. And by being creative and being unique and finding that authentic edge, I know that's a very controversial word, authenticity, but by finding that unique edge, okay, and being creative, people that fall in line with similar values and similar morals will start to connect with you, but not on a more shallow level, on a deeper level. So I'm wondering if maybe in the future, we can get to the point that we can leverage creativity for the good rather than we all just become very, monotonous and very much closed to our social media and our technology and our phones.
Well, I'm sure that it's already being leveraged in the correct way, and it's a life choice. And some people, I have a daughter. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't know that.
You did or you didn't?
I didn't know that.
I have a 6-year-old daughter. Okay. And I teach her on a regular basis that like the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? Luck doesn't exist. But there is two things that humans are lucky for. Number one, the parents that they're born to. Like if you're born to parents that are going to abuse you and treat you badly, that's just unlucky. You don't have any choice over that.
She's a lucky girl that she was born with Dan Gibson as her father. That's for sure.
I certainly tell her that anyway. Well, at least I tell her. And the body that you're born in. Some people are born into incredibly unlucky bodies, and other people are born into bodies that are incredibly, above average. And apart from that, everything else is what you make of it, and it's a choice. And unfortunately, if you're born to parents that are, if your parents don't teach you about these things when you're growing up, you're starting from a more difficult place. But everyone eventually has a choice. And once you leave home, it's up to you as to whether or not you fall into the trap of just not achieving anything, not doing anything, not striving for growth, not striving for something better, not dreaming, like just dreaming about what it is that you want and going and getting that. And through that, growing and learning and understanding all this stuff, then you're going to become a victim of that. You're going to become a victim of that, and you're just going to end up wasting your life away, not doing anything productive or anything cool or leaving a legacy for your kids or your grandkids. You're just going to waste your life away. And that falls into, you said, like leveraging this creative thing for the good and not letting us overtake it. Well, at the end of the day, it's a choice, isn't it? It's a choice that people make. The reason I brought up the luck thing is that, yeah, sure, some people start at a slight disadvantage to other people, but there are plenty of examples of highly advantaged people who fuck their lives up, like so completely, sure. Right? And then there are the example of the people that come from extreme adversity that go on to do amazing, amazing things. So you can't use that as an excuse at the end of the day. It's a choice that we make. And you know, I worry about media and social media because it really does have such a huge influence on us. And again, it's something that I talk to my clients about, and I strongly urge them to stop looking at so much social media. Sure, if you have to go and actually kind of research something, maybe, you know, like, well, for me, I contact a lot of my, you know, men that I work with through social media, but I just I've stopped looking at it. I can feel it rotting my brain, and it's just absorbing other people's creativity and not accessing my own, and not doing things that are important to me or that drive me or motivate me. And that's been a massive change. So that sort of answers a question that you asked me way back in the early days. Like, what's the difference between me now and me 5 years ago? Well, my whole life up until, you know, relatively recently was that I let so much external factors influence my decisions on what I did, rather than it being something that I first of all went deep inside and truly discovered myself, and then start to build on that and project that outwards. And, you know, this is me, this is who I am. And as soon as I started doing that, I became more attractive to myself. I started having more self-respect. I started loving myself more. I started appreciating myself more. I started realizing my value more. And that just has a domino effect on the people around you. And you become a more attractive person as a man all around. And it's that feeling when you discover that, and you start noticing like people gravitating towards you, and like these sort of relationships. And initially you're kind of like, wow, is this actually possible? Like to have this kind of cool relationship that's not needy and like no emotional baggage, and like, I've found someone that isn't bringing me down or anything like that. And it's like, wow, it blows your mind, right? It's cool.
It kind of blew my mind. Exactly. And it still does, when I realize that I can be myself, be my true self, or what I've grown into. Okay. And people will embrace it, and people will appreciate it, and I can be grateful for it. With that being said, you talked about legacy. Is there a legacy that you want to leave behind, Dan?
I would like to help the men in this world that want to grow to become the best possible version of themselves that they can, and go out and be the best possible men for the women out there, for the amazing, beautiful women that I come across every day, that I interact with, that I love. I love women. Women are fucking amazing. I love them so much. And you know, they approach me all the time. They say, "Can you help me? I can't find a boyfriend," because they sort of, they can see from my profile what I do. And I say, "Well, I am helping you. I'm helping men learn how to be better for you." Like that's it. And like that's my contribution to humanity expanding and growing and being better. And I want to make sure that when my daughter, who's 6, is ready to start, meeting men and dating, I want to know that I've contributed everything that I can to make sure that there's good men out there that know their worth, know their value, have access to their creativity, know what their values are, have thought about their values, have thought about their life, have thought about what they want to do, have actually put some effort into who they are as a person and who they are as a man, and are expressing that to the world in a positive way and contributing in their own way, so that she has choice and she has options of good men.
I think this is why I brought you on the podcast, because I obviously don't bring on every guy that's in the dating niche, but if you're able to help men grow, okay, and learn how to find their purpose and embrace their authentic self, okay, and exhibit confidence and actually love women and treat women well, that your daughter will hopefully have positive, experiences as she gets older. And I see a lot of coaches out there in the community are not necessarily preaching that kind of sermon to the men that they're coaching. And it troubles me because I think that it contributes to the tension and the flaws that exist between the sexes right now. So that's a really valiant mission that you have at hand. And let's just move into our final question, which I asked to all of our guests, which is, over the next year, how would you like to evolve your business and also your dating life?
Good question. So for me, my business is something that I just want to continue to grow. You know, I haven't been actually a coach for, decades or a huge amount of time. It's relatively new to me. So there is some growth for me to go through that. I have some financial goals as well that I don't particularly want to talk about on here. But I've set my goals into sizable chunks. Like, I want to reach this point, that's the first milestone. Then I want to reach this point, that's the first milestone. And in order to get to each of those milestones, there's certain things that I need to develop, skills that I need to develop within myself, and experience that I need to get as well. So, I mean, that's a very...
What's one of the skills that you want to develop?
I think that being a better listener is the number one thing that I need to develop. And I'm very rapidly, not even rapidly, just every day I see examples of where I'm not, if I fail to listen properly, and this goes with women, like listening to the words, listening to their body language, listening to their sub-communication, and same with the men that I coach, listening to their sub-communication. Because the men that come to me, like, quite often have massive egos, and they're telling me, like, no, I'm really good at this and I can really do that. And I'm underneath all that, they're sometimes lying to themselves, like really lying to themselves about who they are, and so in order to break through that, I just have to be able to listen to at every level, not just the words, but to their tonality and their emotions and their body language, everything that they're communicating, so that I can help them discover what their truth is by kind of getting a bit of access to it through their blind spot that they can't see. I would say listening is absolutely the number one thing that would be critical for me being able to achieve my mission. In terms of my relationships, I'm absolutely loving my relationships at the moment, and they continue to just get better and better and better. And it's a place that I'm so happy with. I just feel love, and I feel happiness, and I feel joy, I feel fulfillment, I feel contentment, and I love meeting people that I love and that love me. I just can't, what can I say? That's it. It's amazing. And when I'm coming into my relationships from complete wholeness, I've done the work. I don't need anything from the people that I meet. I don't need anything. If I don't have anyone else in my life, will I be okay? Yeah, I would be able to, I've got everything that I need within myself to be a successful, happy human being. Happiness comes from within. It's a state of mind, not a place or a thing, right? And I don't need anyone to complete me. And so therefore, I can go and talk to people, and I can just give. I don't have to take anything. I can just give. And I'm not perfect at that by any stretch of the mark. And I still find myself taking sometimes or like wanting something. And when I catch myself, I work on that. So for me, that's probably the biggest thing that I want to continue working on, is just being able to give my relationships. And
that was great. That was great. That was one of the best answers so far to that question, that you want to learn how to listen for both your clients and also to women. And you already feel whole. And at that point, you can get to a place of giving love unconditionally. Dan, it's been a pleasure actually having you on this podcast. So if anyone wants to reach out and learn more about the quantum mechanics connection to dating, or learn more about your mentoring, how can they do that?
Absolutely. So LinkedIn's probably the best way. Dan Gibson. on LinkedIn, Facebook, Dan Gibson as well. And I mean, look, my email is dangibsonmentoring@gmail.com. And that's the direct path to get in touch with me. So that's DANGIBSONMENTORING, dangibsonmentoring@gmail.com.
Awesome. And guys, you know where to find me, davegoaldevolve.com. So thank you so much for coming on, Dan. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you. It's been great talking. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, let's catch up again soon.
Awesome.